Hollywood's worst alcoholic stars who were drunk at all times. That will shock you. They weren't just drunk on fame, they were drunk all the time. These weren't one-night binges or harmless parties. These were Hollywood's elites stumbling through sets, forgetting their lines, and sometimes dying with a drink still in hand. From glamorous icons to Oscar-winning legends, their addictions were hidden behind the curtain until it was too late. You think you know Hollywood? Think again. This is the side they never wanted you to see. Don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown. Uncovered for more jaw-dropping true stories from behind the spotlight. John Barrymore wasn't just a movie star. He was once regarded as the greatest stage and screen actor of his generation. Born into the legendary Barrymore acting dynasty, he rose to prominence during the 1910s and 1920s, bringing unmatched charisma and a booming theatrical presence to early cinema. But beneath the talent and charm lay a devastating addiction to alcohol that would overshadow his legacy and become one of Hollywood's earliest cautionary tales. By the early 1930s, Barrymore's drinking had escalated to the point where he was no longer dependable on set. Directors reportedly had to feed him his lines off camera because he couldn't remember them. He would stumble through scenes, often needing to be physically held upright by crew members. During one infamous live stage performance, Barrymore forgot his lines completely and turned to the audience slurring, "Line, please." The incident marked the beginning of a very public downfall. Despite his declining health and obvious impairments, he continued to land roles initially due to his name and talent, but producers soon stopped calling. He suffered from tremors, memory loss, and hallucinations, classic symptoms of advanced alcohol-related brain damage. His personal life collapsed as quickly as his professional one. 3 failed marriages, estranged children, and a trail of broken relationships left in his wake. By the time of his death in 1942 at age 60, Barrymore was broke, physically destroyed, and reliant on friends to pay his bills. Perhaps the most macabre symbol of his tragic demise was the rumor later confirmed that his friends borrowed his corpse as a practical joke, propping him up for one final party. Though remembered for his groundbreaking work in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde 1920 and Grand Hotel 1932, Barrymore also remains etched in history as Hollywood's original victim of chronic fatal alcoholism. W.C. Fields built his comedic empire on a persona of drunken mischief, but the reality behind the scenes was far more tragic than funny. Born in 1880, Fields rose through vaudeville and silent film to become one of the most recognizable faces of early Hollywood. His wit was razor-sharp, and his routines often revolved around alcohol-fueled antics, which disturbingly mirrored his real-life behavior. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Fields didn't try to hide his dependence. He frequently carried a thermos filled with gin labeled deceptively as pineapple juice or orange soda, so that no one could question it. His mornings were often wasted literally, as he either couldn't function from the night before or was already deep into his day's drinking. Directors had to work around his erratic behavior, often filming key scenes in the afternoon once the worst of his hangover had passed. Fields' alcoholism steadily eroded both his health and career. Known for unpredictable mood swings while intoxicated, he alienated co-stars and frustrated producers. He slurred lines, missed cues, and at times didn't show up to work at all. Still, because of his box office draw, studios tolerated his conduct longer than they should have. By the mid-1940s, his body had borne the brunt of his lifestyle. His liver was failing, his skin showed signs of advanced rosacea exacerbated by alcohol, and his once dominant stage presence had dulled. Even while hospitalized, Fields hid whiskey bottles under his mattress. He refused to quit even when doctors made it clear he was drinking himself to death. W.C. Fields passed away in 1946 at age 66. He left behind a catalog of comedy classics, but also a legacy marred by a lifelong refusal to part ways with the bottle. He wasn't just drunk on screen. He lived and died that way. Errol Flynn was Hollywood's golden boy in the 1930s and 1940s, a strikingly handsome, energetic actor best known for swashbuckling roles in films like Captain Blood 1935 and The Adventures of Robin Hood 1938. But behind the curtain of cinematic glory was a man whose reckless pursuit of pleasure, especially alcohol, became his undoing. Flynn's daily routine reportedly began with champagne at breakfast and escalated into hard liquor by midday. His drinking wasn't reserved for social settings, it was embedded in his lifestyle. During action scenes, especially on They Died with Their Boots. On 1941, Flynn's coordination was so compromised that he repeatedly fell off his horse, forcing filmmakers to rely on stunt doubles far more than anticipated. Off-screen, his name was synonymous with scandal. His alcohol-fueled escapades led to multiple court appearances, including a notorious 1942 statutory rape trial involving 2 underage girls. Though acquitted, his reputation never fully recovered. The phrase "in like Flynn," a nod to his promiscuity, became part of pop culture, but it masked a deeper, more destructive reality. By the 1950s, the consequences of his drinking were physically evident. His once toned physique had bloated, and his youthful charm was lost beneath puffy features and jaundiced eyes. Despite doctors' warnings about his failing liver, Flynn showed no signs of stopping. His final years were a blur of legal battles, financial troubles, and continued indulgence. On October 14, 1959, Errol Flynn died of a heart attack at just 50 years old. An autopsy revealed internal organs so ravaged by alcohol that the coroner remarked they resembled those of an elderly man. Flynn's legacy as a cinematic icon remains, but so too does his tragic example of how fame without restraint can lead to an early grave. Richard Burton was a titan of stage and screen, a Welsh actor with a thunderous voice and commanding presence. His performances in Cleopatra, 1963, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, 1966, and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965, earned him widespread acclaim, yet his remarkable career was consistently undermined by relentless alcohol abuse. Burton's drinking began early in life, but it escalated dramatically as he entered the Hollywood elite. By the 1960s, he was consuming multiple bottles of vodka daily. His torrid romance with Elizabeth Taylor, whom he married and divorced twice, was legendary not just for passion, but for the mutual self-destruction they indulged in. Together they were tabloid gold and a cautionary tale. On set, Burton was capable of brilliance, but his drinking led to erratic performances. Directors scheduled his scenes early in the day before he became too intoxicated to work. He once bragged about downing 3 vodka bottles before noon without missing a take. Colleagues admired his talent but feared his unpredictability. His health deteriorated quickly. By the 1970s, Burton's robust image had faded. His skin took on a sallow tone, his voice became hoarse, and his once razor-sharp memory dulled. Doctors warned him repeatedly, quit or die. He made attempts to stop several stints in rehabilitation periods of sobriety, but none lasted. He seemed caught between a desire to live and an inability to stop. Burton passed away in 1984 at the age of 58. An autopsy revealed cirrhosis of the liver and other alcohol-related complications. Despite his decline, he was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, yet never won. His is a legacy of brilliance eclipsed by addiction, proof that even the most gifted actors are not immune to the corrosive pull of alcoholism. Peter O'Toole was magnetic on screen, best known for his iconic portrayal in Lawrence of Arabia 1962, a performance that earned him his first of 8 Academy Award nominations. But off-camera, he was a whirlwind of chaos, a man so intertwined with alcohol that he once admitted there were entire films he had no memory of making. His charm was legendary, but his alcoholism equally so. O'Toole's drinking wasn't episodic, it was lifestyle-defining. Friends and co-stars spoke of his ability to consume bottles of whiskey in a single sitting while still functioning. Yet even he couldn't outrun the physical cost. In the 1970s, after a series of frightening medical episodes, doctors discovered that alcohol had burned a hole through his stomach lining, nearly killing him. Emergency surgery saved his life, and he was told point-blank, "Quit drinking or die." Although he gave up hard liquor for a time, O'Toole never fully abandoned alcohol. On sets like Goodbye, Mr. Chips' 1969 production was repeatedly delayed because of his condition. He would slur through scenes, forget entire scripts, or fall asleep mid-take. Despite this, directors still fought to cast him. His raw talent and presence were that powerful. Unlike many alcoholics in Hollywood, O'Toole lived a surprisingly long life, passing away in 2013 at 81. But the years were not kind to him. His once sharp features grew gaunt, and his energy waned. He ultimately turned down a Lifetime Achievement Oscar in 2002, feeling he still had more to accomplish, though his best years were long behind him. Peter O'Toole remains a symbol of brilliance chained to addiction. He didn't just drink between roles, he acted through it, around it, and sometimes despite it. His legacy is both unforgettable and tragic, the very embodiment of a genius undone by his vices. Oliver Reed was a force of nature, an actor of immense power and intimidating screen presence, remembered for films like Women in Love, 1969, The Devils, 1971, and Gladiator 2000. Yet Reed's greatest role may have been that of the relentless drinker. Few in Hollywood matched his destructive endurance with alcohol, and no one escaped the consequences quite as spectacularly. Reed's drinking stories are the stuff of legend. He once reportedly drank over 100 pints of beer in a 2-day span during a contest with Royal Navy sailors. He frequently consumed multiple pints, followed by double shots of rum and whiskey even while filming. During The Three Musketeers, 1973, he arrived on set so intoxicated he could barely walk, let alone deliver a coherent performance. Reed's reputation became both his calling card and his curse. Studios hesitated to insure him. Directors braced for meltdowns. His career declined in the 1980s, not due to lack of skill, but because producers didn't want to gamble on whether he'd be sober or conscious when the cameras rolled. His final performance in Gladiator was supposed to be a triumphant comeback. Instead, it became a tragic epilogue. While filming in Malta in 1999, Reed went on a massive binge: 8 pints of lager, a dozen shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, and several cognacs. He died later that night from a sudden heart attack at age 61. The production used CGI to complete his remaining scenes. Oliver Reed drank with the bravado of a legend, but paid the price with his life. He didn't just flirt with excess, he married it. His legacy endures on screen, but so does the warning. Even the strongest men fall when alcohol becomes identity. Mickey Rourke was once hailed as the next Marlon Brando, a brooding, explosive actor with raw magnetism in films like 9.5 Weeks, 1986, and Angel Heart, 1987. But his rapid descent into alcohol-fueled chaos nearly obliterated one of the most promising careers in Hollywood. Rourke's downfall wasn't just professional, it was personal, violent, and public. By the late 1980s, Rourke was drinking heavily, fighting in bars, and sabotaging relationships both on and off set. His behavior became increasingly erratic. In 1989, he was arrested for public intoxication after a bar fight in Los Angeles, just one of several disturbing incidents. His volatile temper and persistent drunkenness made him a nightmare for directors and co-stars alike. Roles dried up. His once dreamboat looks ravaged by alcohol and later by boxing injuries began to fade. Instead of turning his life around, Rourke quit acting to become a professional boxer. He continued to drink heavily while fighting, physically punishing himself in and out of the ring. By the mid-1990s, he was broke, disfigured from surgeries, and emotionally hollow. "I was drinking myself to death," he later confessed. His self-destructive spiral had alienated almost everyone around him. Then came an improbable comeback. In 2008, he starred in The Wrestler, playing a broken man not unlike himself. The performance earned him a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination. but sobriety remained elusive. Even during his resurgence, Rourke admitted to struggling with staying clean. Today, Rourke's story remains complicated, a portrait of resilience undercut by relapse. He had all the tools to become a Hollywood legend, but alcohol and poor decisions nearly cost him everything. Though he reclaimed some of his legacy, the years lost to drinking left scars that no performance, however brilliant, could fully erase. Dennis Hopper was a Hollywood enigma, part rebel, part visionary, and all chaos. Bursting onto the scene with Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, he cemented his legend with the counterculture classic Easy Rider, 1969, which he co-wrote, directed, and starred in. But by the 1970s, Hopper's life had spiraled so far into substance abuse that his work became increasingly erratic and his reputation turned radioactive. Hopper's alcohol consumption was legendary. While filming Apocalypse Now, 1979, director Francis Ford Coppola reportedly had to feed him one line at a time because he was too drunk and high to follow a script. His average daily intake included up to 28 beers, a full bottle of whiskey, and several grams of cocaine. His behavior became so unhinged that he was blacklisted throughout the 1970s and early 80s, relegated to living alone in the desert, hallucinating and speaking to imaginary people. Yet unlike many fallen stars, Hopper clawed his way back. After hitting rock bottom, he sobered up in 1983. His comeback role in Blue Velvet 1986 as the terrifying gas-huffing Frank Booth redefined his image from outcast to unpredictable genius. Hollywood welcomed him again, albeit cautiously. He maintained sobriety for much of his later life, and despite remaining eccentric, he was once again respected for his talent. Hopper died in 2010 from prostate cancer at the age of 74, having outlived the excess that nearly destroyed him. Dennis Hopper stands as a rare example of a Hollywood alcoholic who not only survived, but evolved. His early years were marked by madness and addiction, but his later career was a testament to the power of second chances and the strength it takes to escape the bottle before it's too late. Christopher Hitchens wasn't a Hollywood actor, but his celebrity status in media and literary circles placed him adjacent to the entertainment world, and he drank like the hardest living star. A British-American author, essayist, and political commentator, Hitchens was infamous for his unapologetic intellect and his unapologetic alcoholism. He began his days with scotch or wine and escalated to vodka or whiskey by midday. Hitchens himself confessed, "I am never not slightly drunk after lunchtime." In debates, television appearances, and public lectures, he was rarely without a glass in hand. Unlike others who concealed their addictions, Hitchens wore his openly almost defiantly as part of his identity. Despite his drinking, his output was staggering. He wrote more than a dozen books, contributed to major publications, and famously debated figures from all ideological backgrounds. His sharp wit and expansive vocabulary remained intact for decades, even as his body silently deteriorated. In 2010, Hitchens was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, a condition directly linked to heavy drinking and smoking. Doctors advised him to quit. He didn't. In interviews, he insisted he had no regrets, even joking. "If I had my life to live over again, I'd drink more." His commitment to alcohol, even in the face of death, was both disturbing and strangely consistent with his defiant persona. He died in 2011 at age 62. His passing shocked the literary world not just because of the loss of brilliance, but because it served as a harsh reminder that even towering minds can fall to very human vices. Christopher Hitchens may not have stumbled through movie sets or slurred through screenplays, but his story belongs in this lineup. His alcoholism was constant, unapologetic, and ultimately fatal, a sobering truth wrapped in eloquence. Nicolas Cage is one of Hollywood's most recognizable and unpredictable figures. An Oscar winner for Leaving Las Vegas, 1995, a role that ironically portrayed a man drinking himself to death, Cage has danced along the edge of personal and professional disaster for decades. And at the center of much of his turmoil, alcohol. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Cage was Hollywood royalty starring in major films like The Rock, Face, Off, and National Treasure. But behind the scenes, his drinking began to spiral. In 2011, he was arrested in New Orleans for public intoxication after a heated altercation with his wife. Police reports described him as heavily intoxicated and belligerent, shocking for a man once hailed for his acting depth. His off-screen behavior became increasingly erratic. Videos surfaced of Cage drunkenly singing karaoke, buying eccentric items like dinosaur skulls, and spending lavishly burning through a reported $150 million fortune. Financial ruin forced him into a wave of low-budget direct-to-video films, a dramatic fall for someone who once won Hollywood's highest honors. Yet Cage never entirely collapsed. Unlike others who drank themselves out of relevance, he found moments of brilliance amid the chaos. His 2018 role in Mandy and the 2021 indie drama Pig reminded audiences of the actor beneath the wild headlines. These performances earned critical acclaim and brought whispers of a full-circle return. While Cage hasn't confirmed total sobriety, his work has recently stabilized. Still, the legacy of alcohol-fueled decisions, legal trouble, public outbursts, and career stumbles lingers. Nicolas Cage remains Hollywood's most fascinating paradox, a man who drank deeply from the cup of excess, but refused to disappear. He may never live down the meme-like persona that years of unhinged behavior created, but his talent and survival ensure his name won't fade anytime soon. Spencer Tracy remains one of Hollywood's most admired actors, known for his understated realism in classics like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, and Inherit the Wind, 1960. But behind his quiet brilliance was a lifelong battle with alcoholism that strained every aspect of his life professionally, romantically, and physically. Tracy was not a loud or flamboyant drunk. He was a secretive one. His struggles with alcohol began early in his career and worsened as his fame increased. Colleagues described him as moody and withdrawn when intoxicated, often disappearing for days on drinking binges. Despite his impeccable performances, directors and producers constantly worried about whether he would show up or be coherent on set. In 1953, he was found passed out drunk in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel after a binge that nearly hospitalized him. These episodes were not rare. His longtime companion, Katharine Hepburn, played a crucial role in shielding him from public scrutiny. She monitored his drinking, cared for him during withdrawals, and reportedly made deals with studios to keep his condition quiet. Physically, alcohol took a heavy toll. Tracy developed severe health complications, including diabetes and heart issues compounded by alcohol's effects. His face aged rapidly, and his once sturdy build became frail. His marriage remained legally intact, largely due to his Catholic faith, but he lived separately from his wife and struggled with guilt and instability. Despite his decline, Tracy remained a revered actor to the very end. He died in 1967 at age 67, just 17 days after completing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Spencer Tracy wasn't the loudest drinker in Hollywood, but his quiet suffering and resilience behind the scenes paint a sobering portrait of a man revered on screen but broken in private. Judy Garland captivated the world as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, 1939, but her life off stage was marked by immense pressure, devastating substance abuse, and a never-ending reliance on alcohol to keep her upright in a brutal industry. Garland's struggles didn't begin in adulthood. They were practically built into her childhood career. By the time she was a teenager under contract with MGM studio executives, controlled her diet, appearance, and even her sleep schedule. They fed her amphetamines to stay awake and barbiturates to sleep. That dependency tragically carried over into adulthood, and alcohol became her constant companion to regulate emotions, stress, and withdrawal symptoms. In the 1960s, her addiction worsened dramatically. She was frequently found intoxicated in hotels, such as in 1964, when she had to cancel a performance in London after being discovered incoherent and disoriented. Managers and handlers scrambled to keep her public image intact, but audiences often saw the cracks, missed shows, slurred singing, and collapsing mid-performance. Garland's financial problems only compounded the stress. She owed back taxes, was often bankrupt, and relied on constant touring to pay the bills, even when her health and sobriety made that impossible. Her final years were marred by hospitalizations, collapsed relationships, and a voice that could no longer reach its former heights. She died in 1969 at just 47 years old from a barbiturate overdose. The coroner ruled it accidental, but the truth was clear: a lifetime of pills, alcohol, and unrelenting pressure had worn her body down. Judy Garland's legacy is one of both triumph and tragedy. A singular talent whose emotional vulnerability lit up the screen, she also became a symbol of how the entertainment industry and alcohol can destroy even the brightest lights from within. Dean Martin, affectionately known as Dino, built a career on smooth vocals, effortless charm, and a public persona that revolved around drinking. As a central figure in the Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., Martin was rarely seen without a cigarette in one hand and a glass in the other. But what seemed like a well-crafted stage act was more complicated beneath the surface. From the 1950s through the 1970s, Martin starred in countless films and maintained a successful music career with hits like Everybody Loves Somebody. On The Dean Martin Show, his frequent jokes about booze and constant drunken demeanor became signature traits. Audiences loved his relaxed delivery and comedic tipsiness, assuming it was all part of the act. And sometimes it was. Martin was known to swap whiskey for apple juice during tapings, preserving the illusion while staying functional. But those close to him knew he also drank heavily off-camera. Co-stars recounted how he often showed up to set, buzzed or nursing a hangover, and his behavior could become erratic when pushed too far. Still, unlike many other stars of his era, Martin never completely spiraled. He maintained a level of self-control that kept him out of tabloids most of the time. As he aged, Martin retreated from public life, especially after the death of his son in 1987. His drinking increased, and his once vibrant energy dulled. By the time he died in 1995 at the age of 78, many fans remembered him more for the glass in his hand than the talent behind the smile. Dean Martin blurred the line between performance and reality. He didn't rant or rage under the influence he charmed. But beneath the cool image was a man who leaned on alcohol not just for laughs, but for escape. Marlon Brando revolutionized acting with his raw emotional realism in A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951, On the Waterfront, 1954, and The Godfather, 1972. But while his performances reshaped cinema, his personal life unraveled under a cloud of depression, isolation, and heavy drinking. Brando was a paradox. Brilliant but withdrawn, influential, yet emotionally volatile. During the 1960s and 70s, as fame crushed his desire for privacy, he turned increasingly to alcohol. Friends described him as moody and reclusive, often locking himself away in his Mulholland Drive home with bottles of wine or scotch. He could go days without speaking to anyone, drinking in silence and brooding over the pressures of celebrity and family tragedies. His drinking, coupled with severe weight gain, eventually took a toll on his career. Directors found it harder to work with him. He forgot lines, refused to rehearse, and lashed out unexpectedly. His behavior on the set of Apocalypse Now, 1979, was notoriously difficult, arriving overweight, unprepared, and allegedly under the influence during much of his shoot. Brando's emotional pain stemming from a traumatic childhood, failed relationships, and personal loss fed his addiction. While he never embraced the drunk celebrity archetype, alcohol was a quiet but ever-present demon in his life. He withdrew from public appearances and interviews, losing interest in the very industry he once ruled. Brando died in 2004 at age 80, suffering from multiple illnesses, including liver failure linked to years of alcohol abuse. His final years were spent in seclusion, a tragic contrast to the charisma that once lit up every screen. For all his genius, Marlon Brando was yet another Hollywood icon whose brilliance dimmed in the long shadow of alcohol, a man who sought refuge in the bottle from a world that could never satisfy him. Elizabeth Taylor was Hollywood royalty, 8 marriages, 2 Oscars, and a face that defined beauty for generations. But beneath the diamonds, gowns, and tabloid glamour, she waged a lifelong war with alcohol that nearly claimed everything she had. Taylor's troubles with drinking escalated in the 1960s during her tumultuous relationship with Richard Burton. The two were passionate, volatile, and notoriously indulgent. They drank not socially, but constantly. Champagne breakfasts, vodka lunches, and scotch-fueled nights were their norm. Friends said they could down multiple bottles of hard liquor in a day and still attend public events, albeit with slurred speech and glassy eyes. By the 1970s, Taylor's alcohol dependence had become uncontrollable. She frequently showed up to sets late, unsteady, or visibly intoxicated. While filming The Only Game in Town, 1970 production was paused several times due to her health. Her weight fluctuated dramatically, and so did her mood. Alcohol fueled her depression and impaired her judgment. Her public breakdowns became tabloid fodder, but Taylor did something few stars of her stature dared. She sought help. In 1983, she checked into the Betty Ford Center, becoming the first major celebrity to do so. Her decision broke stigma and opened the door for others in Hollywood to seek treatment. Even in sobriety, Taylor never denied her past. She later called alcohol a poison that stole years of my life. Yet she continued to advocate for addiction awareness while rebuilding her image as both a survivor and a humanitarian. Elizabeth Taylor died in 2011 at age 79. Though remembered for her elegance and screen presence, her story also serves as a powerful reminder. Even the most glamorous lives can be quietly drowning in addiction. She was more than a star, she was a cautionary tale with a second act. John Belushi exploded onto the comedy scene with Saturday Night Live and Animal House 1978, redefining what it meant to be loud, wild, and dangerously funny. But his meteoric rise was matched by an equally fast fall, driven by staggering levels of drug and alcohol abuse that made him both magnetic and self-destructive. Belushi was rarely sober during his peak years. Cast and crew on SNL said he often showed up drunk or still high from the night before. His signature physical comedy came at a price. Backstage, he was struggling to stand upright. He would drink heavily before live tapings, sometimes using vodka or whiskey to steady his nerves, a routine that quickly spiraled out of control. During the filming of The Blues Brothers 1980, his behavior became almost unmanageable. He would vanish from set to go drinking or partying, forcing director John Landis and co-star Dan Aykroyd to search for him in bars or hotel rooms. Some days he couldn't function, other days he was electric. The inconsistency, however, wore everyone down. Belushi's death on March 5, 1982, shocked Hollywood. He was only 33. Found in Bungalow 3 at the Chateau Marmont. His system was overloaded with cocaine and heroin, a speedball, but years of alcohol abuse had already devastated his health. Though drugs were the immediate cause, alcohol was always present in the background, dulling his brilliance and accelerating his decline. John Belushi didn't just party, he self-medicated with liquor and chaos until it killed him. His legacy lives on in reruns and beloved movies, but his story is a dark emblem of how talent, fame, and addiction can combust in the most tragic way possible. Robert Downey Jr. is now best known as Iron Man, a cornerstone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But for over a decade, he was Hollywood's most high-profile cautionary tale, a genius actor with a bottle in his hand and a foot in jail. Downey's issues with alcohol began young. By the time he starred in Less Than Zero, 1987, playing a drugged-out rich kid, Art imitated life. He drank heavily on and off set, often unable to distinguish reality from performance. His rise to stardom in the 1990s was derailed by DUI's missed court dates and bizarre arrests, one involving breaking into a neighbor's house and falling asleep in their bed. Between 1996 and 2001, Downey was arrested numerous times, often with open alcohol containers in his car alongside drugs. He served time in prison, was fired from Ally McBeal, and became uninsurable by major studios. Many in Hollywood believed he was finished. During one stretch, he entered and exited rehab over 5 times. But Downey refused to give up. In 2003, he committed to long-term sobriety, embracing therapy, martial arts, and accountability. With the support of his wife Susan, he slowly rebuilt his reputation. By the time Iron Man premiered in 2008, he had transformed from tabloid punchline to global icon. Today, Downey is seen as the poster child for recovery in Hollywood. But his past is sobering. Alcohol was once so embedded in his identity that he nearly lost everything, including his freedom. Robert Downey Jr.'s story is proof that even at rock bottom, redemption is possible, but it begins with saying goodbye to the bottle. His comeback isn't just inspiring, it's a direct rebuke to the myth that talent alone can outrun addiction. In an industry that glamorizes perfection, the raw truth about excess reveals a dark underbelly of fame. Our deep dive into Hollywood's most notorious alcoholic stars shows how talent can be undermined by self-destruction. Their stories remind us that brilliance often comes at a heavy cost, challenging us to reconsider the glamorous facade of celebrity life. Are we celebrating a golden era, or ignoring the cautionary lessons behind the headlines? Share your thoughts on the paradox of success and self-sabotage. Like, comment, and subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered.